Hello and welcome to yet another reading vlog with Emily. I thought that because I'm still in a bit of a reading slump, what better way to get out of it than with some Stephen King? That has always been my go-to when I need to read something that I know I'm going to enjoy. So I have a whole bunch of Stephen King books on my shelves that I have not yet read, and I narrowed it down to two. I had Institute and Revival, and I couldn't decide which one to pick up. So I put it to you guys on Instagram to vote in a poll and let me know what you wanted me to read. And you guys picked The Institute. So that is what I'm going to read. And that is what this vlog is going to be, basically. It's just me reading this and kind of like chatting about my thoughts as I go. So I hope that's what you're interested in watching, because that's what you're going to get in this vlog. I've only just started it today, and I read the first section. So that's like the first 40 pages, basically. So far, it's just okay. This is appealing to me because some of my favorite Stephen King novels revolve around children. And that is what this is. This is a story about children who have powers, I think. I want to say like telekinesis, like Carrie, Danny from The Shining, that sort of thing. And that they're basically kidnapped from their homes and brought to this school, this institute, where their powers are taken from them, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly. And I might be wrong, but that's the gist of what I got from my brief reading of the synopsis. And that sounds really interesting. I really like how Stephen King writes children and how he, I don't know, those are usually my favorite books. Like, I love It. I love Carrie. I love The Shining, Firestarter. Those are some of my favorite Stephen King stories. The Body, that revolve around kids and their experiences. So, but I haven't read one that takes place in modern day. So I'm very intrigued by that. I'm very interested to see how Stephen King writes modern children as compared to like his other books where it takes place in a time period that he was more familiar with. So anyway, I'm very excited to get into this. The first section was kind of on the boring side. We're following, what is his name? So boring. We're following Tim Jameson, who is an ex-cop, and he gets a job as a night knocker, which is a thing I've never heard of. And it's basically a boring job, and he's doing cop things. I don't know. Reading about police just is never that interesting to me, so that section was kind of on the meh side. I'm very hopeful that the next section is better. So anyway, I will update you guys as I read more, but I'm very excited to pick up more Stephen King. I haven't read anything by Stephen King in like 2 years, I think. I'm trying to remember, when did I read It? That was like the last King novel I read, and that was a reread. So I'm excited to read something new. So I'm currently about 63 pages into The Institute, and I'm gonna say that I'm liking it quite a lot. The second chapter section, it's not really chapter, the second section of the book is much better than the first section. So that's great. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite books as a kid, was Shadows by John Saul, which was about this school for gifted children where I think it's been forever since I read it. I think the premise was that they were like stealing their brains. Maybe. I don't know. Does anyone have read that? I was a weird kid, but I loved that book. And this has a lot of the similar vibes. Like there's this child who is very gifted and talented and like super smart, but it kind of, instead of being like they're promoting this school that they want him to come to, they just take him. They can kidnap him in the night. So interesting. I am intrigued as to what this is and what they're doing with these children. And it doesn't specifically say he's telekinetic or anything like that, but it's implied that he might have the ability to move things with his mind, which I'm here for. I loved Carrie. I will say that he still writes kids like they're in their 60s. Like they don't sound like children at all. And I get that he's like, well, he's gifted and super smart, but he still talks like Stephen King. Like he speaks like an adult man. I don't know. It's weird. It's like some of the dialogue that this kid is saying just doesn't sound authentic. Kids don't talk like that. I don't know. At least none I've ever met. So it's, you know, typical Stephen King. What I would expect his characters to sound like. So I'm not even counting that as anything against the book. Like I went in expecting like his characters all have a very distinct voice, sort of like how Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know, Angel and all of that Joss Whedon stuff all sounds pretty similar to each other. Like you can tell that those were written by Joss Whedon. And Stephen King people talk like Stephen King. I'm rambling again. Anyway, I'm enjoying this. I'm not very far in yet though, so like 63 pages, and I think this is like a 575 page book, so I'm going to be here a while, but I'm allotting myself little snippets of time throughout the day where I can read for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, because I have too many things to do at this time, and like I can't devote hours. Like I could potentially read this in like a weekend if that's all I did. So I don't have that kind of luxury anymore. Long time no see. It's been like a couple of days since I picked up this book. But you know, it's fine. I was feeling a little bit off. I've been a little under the weather, nothing major. Mostly just my period, honestly. But anyway, I picked this up again today and was just reading for an hour or so, and I am on page 188 currently. So probably, I mean, what would you call that? Like a third of the way through, I guess, is what I'm gonna guesstimate. So I'm really enjoying it. Like I like Stephen King's writing when he does like this dynamic of like a kid group, a friend group, whatever. Like that I think is like his sweet spot. However, I will say that I'm just like, I don't, it's I'll say that it's striking, like how he writes children's voices. Like it sounds like a 70-year-old man is writing this. So like that does pull me out of it just a little bit. Just some of the kids do sound like children. Like there's one kid who is 10 years old, but he acts more like a 6-year-old, and he feels like a small child. But for the most part, these kids don't sound like kids. So I will say too that this book can be kind of disturbing, in that these are children who are basically being tortured, and like medically tortured, but also abused. And so that's a little bit hard to read, but I'm really interested to see where this is going, because this is going to be spoiler free. I'm not going to like drop any big spoilers in this video because I don't want to ruin this book for anybody. But I will say, you know, like my thoughts overall, and I don't know where this story is going. And that's one of the things too that I like about Stephen King's books, is that he can often surprise me. And like I don't know what's happening here. Like I can try to theorize, because there's elements of this that feel very similar to what is it, The Shop, that we see in some of his other books, like Firestarter, where, you know, her parents were experimented on, and that's how she gets her power. So it feels a little bit like that. And I'm wondering if it is The Shop, because it's in Maine, and because it would make sense to connect it with some of his other books. But it isn't specifically stated that that's what's going on here. but one can assume, I guess. So if that's the case, what is it that they're trying to do? There's this whole thing, and this isn't really a spoiler, but there's this whole thing with there's a front half and a back half of this institute, and in the front half is where we meet our characters and where things are happening in the story, and they kind of know what that is, but nobody knows what the back half is. It's like the afterlife. Like no one who's gone there has ever come back, so no one knows what that is or what that means or what the tests are for or anything. So I can't quite figure out what's going on. And so it's very much a mystery, and like there's no clues really. Like they mentioned some things that maybe could be construed as clues, but overall I'm still just baffled. I don't know where this is going at all. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens in the rest of the book. How long will it take me? I don't know. I really want to finish this in the next few days because I need to start the Midnight Library like as soon as humanly possible. Isn't my tree pretty? Can you guys see it? Like it's twinkly. We can set it with different like light settings. It's the fanciest Christmas tree I've ever owned. It's so cool. We can we have an app. We can change the settings. Right now it's on the carnival setting, so it's like all different colorful lights. It's really pretty. There's one cupcake left. We got cupcakes from our favorite bakery the other day, and this is the last one, and it's mine. It's apple, I think. Pretty sure it's an apple cupcake with, I'm not even sure what the frosting is, but there's apple pie filling in the top. And it's gluten-free and vegan, so it's dairy-free, and I'm about to devour it. I am now, I don't know, like 2/3 of the way into the Institute. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't know how to talk about this book without being spoilery. This is a hard vlog. I don't know why I thought I could vlog my reading and my thoughts without being spoilery, but here we are. I'm struggling a bit with so much child abuse in it. I mean, I knew it was about children, and I knew it was about this institute where they were being tested on, but I don't know if I was prepared for how like dark it gets in parts. So that's been not so fun to read about. But I still am like really completely invested in this story. There was a weird plot thing happening at like the very beginning of the book that felt very out of place. But now, like a little more than halfway through, I can see where it was going and that there's a payoff there. So that's interesting. I'm still very curious as to like, there's been some explanation about what they do at the Institute, but I'm still not really getting it as like the whole big picture plan of like what this is and how it works and what its purpose is. And like, I don't know if that's a thing I'm going to get in this book. I don't know if they're going to like leave me hanging with that and just, or if there's going to be like a full explanation, or if I'm just supposed to get it. I don't know. But I'm very unsure of where this is gonna end. I'm really enjoying it, and like I'm hoping to finish it in the next like 2 days because I have to move on to another book like this week. So that's my plan. I'm gonna like burn through and finish it this weekend and like do a final review. So the next time you see me, it's probably gonna be my final thoughts. I will say that as always, Stephen King is incredibly verbose. Like there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, did we really need 4 pages of a description of this? We could have done this in a couple paragraphs. Like we didn't need all of that. But you know, that's just what you get with Stephen King. He's a wordy guy. He has a lot to say. I'm glad I picked this up. I think this is something that I've just like needed. I've craved like some Stephen King this year. I haven't read anything. And I kept meaning to, so I'm glad I picked this up. So anyway, I will be back in the next segment with my final thoughts on The Institute and whether or not I think you should read it and whether it's worth your time. So far, I'm leaning towards yes, it is. I would say like my tentative rating for this is going to be like a 3.5, 4, maybe even a 4.5. I don't know. It depends on where this goes, but I'm feeling pretty good that I'm going to be satisfied. I finished and then promptly broke my selfie stick. I had to get my other camera out. It's been an ordeal this morning, but I finished the book, and I guess we'll talk about it now. I'll give you my final thoughts, my final review. I'm gonna give this, I haven't put it up on Goodreads yet, I think I'm gonna give it like 4.5 stars. Like, it's really between 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed the story. Like, I was riveted the whole time. I do think it was a little bit too long, but then again, you could argue that that really does help you to immerse into the story. There were moments where I thought, like, we didn't need all of that stuff happening. Like, it could have been done faster and it would have still worked, but I guess it really does help you to feel like the way the characters are feeling of like being trapped in this place and dealing with all of the chaos that went with that. I don't know how to talk about this without getting spoilery, so I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try. I really liked all of the characters and their interactions. Like I said before, I think Stephen King is at his best when he's got like a kid friend group. Like, that dynamic just does, like, it's wonderful. It's some of my favorite stuff in his writing. So I really loved that. I loved the whole idea of what they were doing, because we do get an explanation. Like, I was worried, like, somewhere towards the middle that maybe we weren't going to get a full explanation of what this place was. We do, and it was kind of fascinating, and it felt realistic. And even though it's kind of fantastical and we're talking about like psychic abilities and that sort of stuff, it felt pretty realistic, and it felt kind of like part of the shop, or maybe the shop is a part of this program. I don't know, but it all felt sort of connected, and I love how everything always comes back to Maine. Everything evil is in Maine. I don't know. I found that whole premise really intriguing and really interesting and very fleshed out. Like, I know I complained that he's very verbose, but he really does explain, like, everything. And you really feel like he's thought it through. I really liked the dynamic of the kids. I really liked how, like, the very first chapter of this book takes place and is following a character who you don't see again until like 60% of the way through the book. And after reading that first chapter, I was like, why did we need that? It made no sense. And then all of a sudden it comes back into play, and I'm like, oh, it made perfect sense. Like, I don't know. That was kind of brilliant, even though at the time I was kind of annoyed by it. So, I don't know. I love that Stephen King can still surprise me with things like that. Like, I've been reading his books since I was 12, and you would think by now, like, I would know what to expect in one of his books, and for the most part I do, but there's always still a surprise, there's always still a twist that I didn't see coming, and I really like that. I usually have issue with his endings, and I thought this ended in a way that made sense for the story. It ended in a way that made sense for the characters. It was a little slower to come about than I thought it would be. Again, we really do live with these characters minute to minute, hour by hour. Like, literally, there's like, it tells you what time it is throughout the time in the book towards the end. So you really are living with them in the moment. So yeah, it does take a little bit of time to get there, but I feel like there was still a good payoff. Like, there are some of his books where I was like, that was a stupid ending, and I was mad about it. But this is not one of those cases. I feel like this is not quite a perfect book, but pretty darn close to. So, highly recommend you check this out. If you're interested in reading some of the newer Stephen King, I have to admit, I haven't read a lot of his newer stuff. I tend to stick to his older books because that's just where I was comfortable, where I grew up with that. But some of his newer stuff I haven't picked up yet, so I'm excited and pleased that this worked out for me, that this was a good book. I don't know. Sometimes I worry that when a person's been writing for that long, maybe they're going to start to get lazy. Maybe their books aren't going to be as good anymore, but this was excellent. This was top-notch Stephen King writing. So I'm so glad I picked this up. It's definitely helping to get me out of this reading slump that I've been in. This might even end up in my favorites but at the end of the year, my top 10. I haven't even thought about that yet. I don't know what that's going to look like, but this could be on it. I don't know. So I hope you guys enjoyed following me around this last week-ish as I was reading this book. It's not the best vlog that I've done, but I tried to keep it on topic the best that I could. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you pick up The Institute or any of Stephen King's books. I might do a video like ranking my favorites. I don't know. I've been thinking about it. If you're interested in seeing that, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll put that together. Anyway, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye!